roll.
Mrs. Garvey?
Here.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mrs. Bros?
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes. Now, if you'll please join me to stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the point in our meeting where we invite public comment. If there's anyone here tonight who would like to speak to the board, if you'll please indicate so, then there's a statement that I would like to read. Yes, if you please, wait just one minute, I'll read my statement, and then if you'll stand and state your name. Community comments are one way for citizens to communicate with the Board of Education. When you're called upon, please stand and state your name, your address, and your topic. Excuse me. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Remember, this is a formal and official meeting of the Board of Education, and that what you say becomes part of the official meeting report. If your comment involves a problem with a student, an employee, or a board member, please do not address them by name. Keep in mind that we are meeting in a schoolhouse and possibly in the presence of students. At this time, the primary role of the Board of Education is to listen and reflect on your comments. Sometimes board members may respond or ask questions, but they may not, and we always, whether we respond or not, value your input.
My name is Jerry Canton. My wife and I live at 221 Manor Brook Drive in South Russell. I am a retired classroom teacher, and for the last 5 years I've been substituting here in Chagrin Falls. But this evening I'm here as a member of the South Russell Council. Just to say a few words about our proposed playground. About 19 months ago, Mr. and Mrs. Tripp of South Russell approached me at our fall festival and asked me if we ever thought about a playground. And I chaired the properties committee, and I said, well, you know, it's a great idea, but the council's going to ask, you know, where's the money going to come from? Well, they said they had a few ideas, so they wrote us a check for $85,000. We received a $23,000 grant from the state of Ohio. We also received other donations. And by mid-May, if weather permits, our service department will prepare the ground. And hopefully by the first week of May, or the last week of May, first week of June, the playground company will come in and build this beautiful playground. 85 feet by 85 feet. My focus group is the third graders journey. And I asked them, what do you like? They said, well, Mr. Cat, we like to run through things, you know, slide, swing, and run around in circles, and just have fun. So this is it. This is it. Now, there's going to be 6 benches around it. Those benches have been purchased by individuals and families as a memorial. We're also going to be planting 15 trees. I believe we have 2 or 3 of them already sold, but we are selling these trees as memorials. And individuals who would like to purchase a tree can contact our Southwest Hall. Danielle would be happy to take your call and get you on the list. The contribution for the tree is $650, and that also includes a grass seed. So I want to thank the board, thank you all for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very exciting. And did you state the location of the park?
The location will be at the Bell Park, just to the east of
Okay.
the
Yeah. So the main park, but to the east side of the pavilion,
Correct.
near the parking lot.
well,
Set back from the parking lot. Okay, good. Well, thank you. That's really generous donation and very exciting development for South Russell. Okay, so next thing on our agenda is the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion for the approval of minutes from the March 6th and the March 20th regular meetings? Moved by Mary Kay and seconded by Sharon Bros. Any discussion? Ms. Lucott, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mrs. Bros?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Can I have a recommendation for board recommendation 5A and 5B?
So moved.
Second.
Sure.
Okay.
Do it.
Motion by Mrs. O'Toole and seconded by Mrs. Rose. Any discussion? Actually, be some discussion on this. So the first item on the agenda is that we are approving the appointment of Ashley Brudno into the position of treasurer effective August 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2022. We, as you all, many of you are intimately aware, the board has undertaken really an exhaustive search process for our next treasurer that has involved really the guidance and consultation of K-12 Consulting, who are really experts in this field of recruiting and helping to select school treasurers, as well as community input and staff input and a very thoughtful approach. We wanted to be sure that we identified what's coming down the road for our district and look at our skill sets within our administration and really be thoughtful about what we need to do to bridge any gaps that we might have, what we need to do to continue the strengths that we have as we head into the future of Chagrin Falls. So I'll say embarking on this process was a little daunting, and we were told that treasurers are not common, that school treasurers are just not a common breed. We should expect to have a puddle, not a pool, of candidates. And so I think that we were all delighted to have had 22 applicants and had interviews with 7 highly qualified individuals. And at the end of the day, final interviews with 3 candidates. And any one of them was qualified and able to lead us into the future. We were in a wonderful position where any one of them would have been a wonderful treasurer for our school district. So Ashley comes to us from Chagrin. We're grateful to them for letting her go. I know it was very hard for at least the board president to whom I spoke, and very, very highly of Ashley. Has a very strong background in school finance, and we really look forward to welcoming her to the team. I'm sure Bob is going to want to say a few words as well, but before I transition over to him, I wanted to say we are approving tonight the full-time contract for Ms. Brundo, and also an interim contract so that she can start in June, which gives her a few weeks to wrap up things and get that May forecast, 5-year forecast update done in Chardon, and then come on over to Chagrin Falls and help us get ready for our close of the year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hunt and any other board members who'd like to make a comment.
So, actually, I'd just like to, on behalf of the administrative team, who's the vast majority is here this evening, I'd like to welcome you to Chagrin Falls and look forward to working together with you. I think what stood out for me in the interviews was the relationship and talking about Hannah and Chardon, the two of you have, and your appreciation of the educational side of the house and understanding what our role is and what our duty is. So we are very excited to have you here and welcome you to our team.
So we'll,
Welcome to Chagrin Falls. We're excited to have you. As Catherine said, it was a very exhaustive process. It was a very gated process, so we all had our roles to play in it, but appreciate you being here as well.
so we'll take a brief break now and after we vote. And welcome Ashley. So Ms. Lucott, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin? Mr. Kinzinger?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Ashley, we want to welcome you aboard. Get a photo, shake your hand.
Congratulations.
And then she put them up here. Bob, do you want to stand on the other side of Ashley? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, wait in the hall.
Yeah. Would you, please? All right.
That was very nice. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
Your capital planning, and then I'll do it for mine.
So can I have a motion for agenda item 5C?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Roche, second by Mr. Ryan. Any discussion? This is, let me give an introduction to this. So as you know, last year we formed a board capital planning committee. And that group has been hard at work on planning for facility improvements and capital improvements that need to be made in the district, and how our process for evaluating projects, our process for making sure we have funding for projects. And what this is a charter that really sets forward the parameters for the committee's work, so that we have very clear understanding of the purpose of the committee, the membership of the committee, when the committee meets, and what the purpose of the committee is. So we've been working on this charter for a few months now, and it's now finally ready for board approval. All board members have had a chance to review it and weigh in on it in advance, and I don't think there are any continuing questions. So unless somebody wants to raise a point or any questions about it. Okay, then Ms. Luco, would you please take the floor?
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mrs. Gardner?
Yes.
So at this time, I'm going to ask the commission, so I keep my administrative team on the good side. There's a few that have to hang around for presentations tonight, but this time we really all have lots of nights and lots of events. Feel good with board education, I think to dismiss those that are not on the agenda this evening.
Absolutely, and I'd even go so far as to say, why don't we take 5 minutes so that Ashley can also meet everybody and put a name with a face, and then we'll reconvene the meeting.
Great.
At this point, the board is going to share board committee updates, if there are any that are applicable. First is the audit committee, Mrs. O'Toole.
The board is that we're working on a date to try to street audit.
Wonderful. The board policy committee, Mrs. Rose.
So the board has several policies that have been updated that we'll be voting on tonight. But one I would like to call out, it's the policy for community use of school premises. This is something that we've been talking about for quite some time. Many of you know that when we were in the process of trying to determine what to do with the intermediate school and what our options were, the district applied for a grant from the state and received funding to help build a portion of the project that receives community use, namely the intermediate school cafeteria and auditorium. And along those lines, we heard feedback from a lot of our community support organizations and local organizations that one way that it would help them to make better use of our school premises would be to enable alcohol at designated times in designated locations at adult events. So the policy that we're looking at tonight has been updated. It's KGR1 to include those changes and set an overarching policy, and then we will be following up. We're working on additional regulations which will really delineate how an organization goes about doing that and what they need to do in terms of getting a liquor license and insurance, and where they would be allowed to serve alcohol and where they would not be allowed to serve alcohol, and all of the details. But we're very excited to be able to bring this forward and better support our community's use of our facilities when we're not using them to educate our students.
So to be clear, I think we spoke earlier, there is a KG policy, which is very, very broad. It's like 3 sentences. KGR 1 will give you more detail, more depth, and then 2, potentially 3, subsequently will add more layers of detail that you would want as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Rose. For capital planning, as you know, we just approved the charter for We did have a meeting on April 11th. We discussed the process for evaluating, prioritizing, and approving capital projects, including those that might be identified in a facility master plan for a larger future project. So it's very complex to determine what projects to undertake when you might have something down the road that's also pending. And our next meeting is September 11th, unless we decide to call one in the interim if we're needed by the administration. The Board Finance and Budget Committee, Mr. Rankin.
So we have our initial scheduled meeting on Tuesday, April 30th at 6 o'clock.
Great. And then Records Retention and Chair Report. At this point, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Hunt for Superintendent Reports.
Thank you. Good evening. A couple of reports this evening. We're going to start with an updated construction project. There are 3 recommendations under superintendent's reports that I would like Carrie Ash to review. The first is OCO 0027, change order 227, and OCO 0028. So Carrie, why don't we start with just a general update on the site. I will tell you, it was a really, really big day for me. I had the opportunity to take a group of students over to the site, and I was able to walk on all floors from 1914 to the new construction without going outside, around, without crawling through. So a lot of progress has been made. So I'd ask Carrie to give an update on progress and then quickly cover change order 27, 28. The board just had that information, and I'm sure it's with you guys as well.
I'm going to jump in real quick. We do have a new layout. I know it's a little confusing. We do have a new X on the floor. So you'll stand close to the screen. Do you see it?
Oh, great. Okay.
That way you can see us and we can see the presentation. Thank you.
So I did pass out your board update. This is for both March and April. So just to start with an update on the exterior. This month we completed the masonry veneer. The only masonry veneer that's left is where we have our material load in and load out. So once the buck hoist gets removed, which happens this month, you'll start to see the balance of the masonry veneer be completed. Masonry cleaning will probably be happening next month in May. When you pass by the site, you're going to start to see exterior sidewalks go in this month, along with the west stair that's at the back side of the 1914 building. That will be installed. We did award the landscaping contract. We've received submittals on landscaping. Landscaping will begin in June, so that'll be a little bit while to start to see final landscaping going in.
Who is it awarded to?
Royal Landscaping. And I have worked with them before. They did a great job. So moving into the inside of the building, just like Bob said, when you go to the connector for the new addition, the 1914 building, the stair has been installed, the handrails installed, and the concrete treads have been poured. So now you can move about easily. It's wonderful. Now that we have gotten through those unforeseen issues, we're calling it the connector area. You're going to start to see the framing, the drywall, and the finishes go in on all floors up. We completed MEP overhead rough-ins in the 1914 building on the 3rd and 2nd floors. You're going to start seeing drywall being taped and sanded this month with the first coat of paint coming on. In the gym, we ran into an issue with the exterior lintels. We were not supposed to repair the exterior lintels of the gym windows, but once we got up there to install the new windows, we noticed that they were very deteriorated. So we engaged a structural engineer, and I'm happy to report we didn't have to do a full replacement of beams and additional steel, but we had to replace 8 exterior lintels and 8 exterior bottom plates. That has since been done, and it's actually one of the change orders that you're looking at tonight. We did that on time and material, and the gym windows have been installed, along with those octagonal windows that are in the gym. On the 3rd and 2nd floor in the new addition, we started devicing out tiles. What that means is we get the ceiling tile and we start to put the electrical devices within those tiles. So you're going to see tiles sporadically placed right now. That's because the devices are being put in. We're going to wait to hold off to drop those tiles until we have a couple of inspections. So if you're on the 3rd floor, probably the beginning of next week, you're going to start to see ceiling tiles dropped. We have light fixtures installed on the 1st floor of the new addition. We have the linoleum flooring on all floors of the new addition being installed. We completed MEP overhead roughs in the kitchen and student dining area, and we are finally out of the ceiling of the auditorium. So that second set of scaffolding has now come down. On Monday, they're starting the repair of the ceiling in the auditorium. You step by, you'll see that work done. In the coming month, of the balance of this month in May, what we're going to be seeing is MEP finishes on all of the 3 floors of the new addition. You're going to see casework being installed on the 1st floor. It's already been being installed on the 2nd and 3rd. The gym walls were prepped today, so the first coat of paint went on those gym walls. So towards the end of this week, beginning of May, you're going to start to see the striping with the lettering and the logo. We have started installing the stage rigging steel that goes on the above the auditorium stage, and we will be completing the auditorium ceiling patchwork here, as I mentioned. Any questions about the progress update? Do you want to move on to the change orders?
Please.
So I'll start with change order 27. The majority of this change order, as you see, will be made up of what we call RFIs. There are about 6 RFIs. RFIs are requests for information. So there might have been ambiguity in the documents, and we asked a question, and we either had to change it because of an unforeseen condition or for clarity. The first item was the HVAC contractor was directed to add some exhaust grills, volume dampers, ductwork, diffusers, because there was a ceiling that was previously supposed to be an ACT drop ceiling, but they changed that to a drywall lid. We had to make some changes with our HVAC. That's the first part of that change. The second RFI was for Warren Roofing to add some plywood. There was an unforeseen condition at the 1940 brick parapet, and there was a gap there. I'm assuming at the time they weren't able to get up there to review the parapet heights, and so we had to close that gap and lap the roofing over that, so that's to add plywood there. RFI 404 was to add some valves for the cold water line that runs through the student dining. The plumber had found a constructability issue and made a recommendation, and the engineers agreed with them. We had to rework some sensory support steel swing for the swing that we had put in that room. The next one is for RFI 426. On the 3rd floor, when we were walking through the building, when our team was walking through the building one day, we had noticed that the wall height did not call to go to the deck on the 3rd floor. Talking with the HVAC contractor, and Dan Costello, who had been on our staff at the time, it was a recommendation that we probably should take that up to the ceiling to help with the ductwork and the HVAC flow. Engineer reviewed that and agreed, so the change was to add drywall just to the lid. The next one is for sound caulking the penetrations. There was a wall type C11 that wasn't shown to go to the deck. It needed to go to the deck, so whenever you take your drywall to the deck, you have to sound caulk all of your penetrations to avoid from sound transference from room to room. That's change order 27. Any questions on that one? And that change order was in the amount of $15,500. So change order 28, has to do with 3 issues. The first issue was to relocate a frame. We had to re-drywall and tape because a corridor rail needed to be added. The frame was already installed when we were directed to add the rail. So once the rail was added, it interfered with that door frame and we had to move it down. The second item is the replacement of the gym lintels. That is what I had referred to earlier. We replaced those 8 lintels, just the exterior and the bottom plates. And that was performed on time and material. And then the last item, I did talk about this in a previous meeting. We did all this work on time and material. It's called I-beams and angles. Essentially, what this was for is anytime you make an MEP penetration into a wall, you have to install a lintel. And normally there is a lintel schedule on the drawings. So it was safe to assume the standard lintel. When we asked the engineer for the lintel schedule, she dove into it a little bit deeper, and the penetrations we were referencing were all of your existing walls. And the thickness of those walls, which was much thicker than what she anticipated. So instead of lintels, she wanted structural steel added in some locations. So we kind of got together as a group and we said, well, structural steel is going to be really pricey. Is there any way we can brainstorm and do something a little bit differently? And that's when we went with the angles. So that was that change. That was on a time and material basis. The total amount for this change order was $39,061. Any questions on the changes?
So while I have you up, Carrie, an additional recommendations added to move forward with the door entry projects at the high school and Chagrin Elementary. And appreciate the board's patience with this. As you know, we've been working on bidding this project over the last couple of months. Originally, we asked Bill Baker to put a bid together. It was tracking approximately $100,000 over the budget. We also went to another contractor that worked in the district before and asked them to start creating a bid as well. We thought that it was tracking under where we're currently at. It came back late last or early this week as significantly over the bid that was over. So
Not going in
Going in
the
the
right
wrong
direction.
Going the wrong direction. So we went back to Gilbane and asked for forgiveness first. And then, just quite honestly, they put everything aside and reconfirmed pricing, worked with their subs to see if they could get this thing done. So that has been the focus of, I think, everything Carrie's been doing over the last couple of days to move this forward. So the reason we are asking to approve this tonight is it's a very time-sensitive project in terms of when if we want to get this thing done over the summer in preparation for next year. A lot of conversation has happened about what the options are out there, what could be done. Certainly, Chris and Carrie can speak to some of those. But I just want to first just thank Carrie and Bang for their efforts to bring this into reality, because we think it's an important project. Also want to speak briefly to kind of the urgent necessity language that's in, that is included because it allows us to go through a non-conventional bidding process. So when you see the recommendation, you see the urgent necessity, it's an opportunity in law where we can move forward with a process that doesn't necessarily go with the standard bidding process that we would typically go through. So that language, I think, required a little bit of explanation. Again, we went through this with Dave Riley, the construction attorney, way back when we started this process, and is looking at this as a change order with Gilbane. So it has been vetted through for legal counsel as well. I want to pause there. Chris Carey, I know his design has been the top of a lot of conversation. It seems to me market and labor shortage and a lot of things are driving costs right now. And certainly that's played out. Don't you speak a little bit to some of the conversations we had to try to drive the number down?
And Ryan from TDA, who's the designer on this project, apologizes he's not able to be here as on a board meeting tonight as well. But we tried to pull our thoughts together and put those on some paper, and Karen and I thought we would speak through those. As Bob mentioned, really challenging construction market right now. I think I've been on the phone for the last 3 or 4 weeks, back and forth, even with Carrie and subcontractors and another contractor, really trying to get pricing. A number of subcontractors, especially on the glazing side, provide the glass and door systems, have even walked away, just not being able to get the project done in time. There's a lot out there in the market right now regarding door systems as well. So we wanted to put together maybe just some ideas of where we've tried to get VE on this project, value engineering, and try and scope down some of the costs. And we can kind of walk through some of those for sure. Yeah.
So one of the things that we did just like we did all of our other jobs with you. A little bit different because I normally don't do this when it's a change order, but I brought in every trade in the presence of Chris and Ryan, and we scoped them. That's not normal for change order pricing, but knowing that we had to go through this exhaustively and just kind of pick apart everything. I brought each trade in and we brainstormed of where can we save money, where are some economies. One of the items that came up was on the drawings at the high school, it was all shown as curtain wall. Curtain wall is more expensive than storefront. so the glazing contractor, which is Carol Glass, came up with a suggestion of, can we move that over to storefront? Won't affect your look, it's just this how the system is manufactured. And Ryan agreed, he thought that would be a great cost saving measure. And we were able to chop out, I think, around $30,000 alone by looking at that. We thought we might have had to beef up the storefront with steel, but we didn't have to do that. He waived the engineering counts because he didn't feel that it was needed, which is standard, that's nothing out of the ordinary. Some other items that we looked at was...
That doesn't change anything from a security perspective?
No, that's purely constructability. And that's what we were trying to look at, was not hacking apart the design, and how can we just get a little bit more creative. And so we also engaged Mike on the technology side, and came up with some innovative solutions about the AI phone, using a slightly different phone than what's at the intermediate school, but still has the same capabilities without getting too far into it. Also, with your security access, that was another item that, instead of matching what was at the intermediate school, we were able to value engineer an item there to provide the same functionality, but just at a lesser dollar cost. Another item that's not included in here, but I'm still going to investigate, is looking at a different hardware. So Ryan at TVA, I believe, has an alternate spec. I'm going to be sending that to the contractor this week. So if there is savings on that, it would be realized, on top of what we have here. And then some of the other items that they seem simple, but they go a long way. This isn't a full paint job, and so whenever something is not quantifiable on a drawing, that leaves space for ambiguity and for people to load. They're protecting their risk, and you can't blame them for that because they don't know how much they're going to have to do. And so we stripped all of that unknown out, and we're going to carry it as an allowance. So if we have to do some painting, we'll carry that as an allowance. We're going to reuse all the existing ceiling tiles that are there to help save some money, which shouldn't be an issue, along with the grid. Anything else?
I would say we also added a door at the southeast side of Gurney Playground door that was not in the original cost estimation. The reason why it needed to be done, it needed to be done prior to this at some level, and we added it to this, and then we added the access controls to that, as well as some of the security features on the glass we've talked about in previous meetings as well too. So I felt that it was a good time to add it and a good time to add this project. So there's a bit of a chunk in this project that's mad that you wouldn't have seen the original estimate to.
Do you know roughly how much that is?
30, I would say 28 with the technology, maybe close to 30. I've looked at so many different. So I'm not going to know what's it.
Sharon, I'm going to have to get you that exact number. I don't have it right here. You're probably close though with that once you take out.
It may not be this particular round. That's where we're at.
Chris, would you speak to, I know we've had multiple presentations about this project, but if you could take a few steps backward about the intent of the project, why it needs to happen this summer, that kind of thing, just an overview I think would be helpful, because obviously some of us have questions about, well, if the market is bad, maybe we wait. Why is this something that we need to move forward with in the summer?
Sure, and I think if you look a few years back, we added a vestibule at the middle school. It's been functioning very well for us, received well by our public, by visitors. We want to match really good visitor engagement process with really vetting people well and providing security, providing actual physical security barrier layers. So, the main door, the vestibule, the second door with access control in both areas. We wanted to add those features to Gurney and high school. We've looked at this project a number of different ways, specifically in high school for a couple different opportunities. I think this was the most thoughtful deep dive, and it also was a response to our lobby guard system that had been received pretty well by parents and by visitors. We're vetting people, but we're also letting them in a secured manner as well too. So we also spend a good deal of time with our principals at both buildings as well as other buildings in response, and this project coincides with the construction of the new intermediate school, which has a very similar entranceway. If you've been through that, there's an exterior door, then there's a side door into the office. foyer and a vestibule, and then you are let out into the main building after you credential. So, and I think we had the opportunity on this project to talk with a number of security experts in the field at a high level during the design work on the intermediate school that allowed us to really leverage some of that design and that thinking and safety and security on the building. And I'll also say to this, we've had feedback through an assessment that was done for safety and security that put this as a large priority, not just for our school district, but also in response to our district facility committee with the families and the parents that were involved in that as well too. And again, not to belabor this, but through our work with our school resource officer and police department, this has been a recommendation there as well too. So the idea to not be able to capture this summer really worried a number of our administration teams as well, in making sure this recognition carried forward. And I honestly would worry about trying to do it over a holiday break or a spring break, especially when we look at the size of the scope.
I would agree.
So at Gurney, it's the main entrance and then this entrance to the playground. Are those the two doorways that are being?
There are. At Gurney, there's a main entrance that gets retrofitted with new door, new hardware system. You come then into a vestibule where now, at that point, you're just into the building.
Right.
And in that vestibule, then you are access controlled into the office area. And then you can get credentialed and then go back out into the building as well.
But not the gym entrance. That'll just be locked, so visitors will have to come in. And you're saying there'll be consistency in all of our buildings with the way you access the building, so it'll become familiar to parents, and the same technology for safety and security as well. We're screening in the same way and maintaining records in the same way, so that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, so it'll get us really at that same, caliber across the whole, it's the same type of experience across the building.
Right. Well, obviously, we never like to spend more than what we had budgeted, but putting it in perspective, my understanding is that we'll apply this against the bond proceeds to the degree that we have money that isn't needed at the intermediate school that could help pay for this project. But then also, just as a reminder to the board, that we are underspent on our permanent improvement budget this year. We have, Candy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think it's in excess of $300,000 from what the board has approved for projects, up to that $1.5 million that we had set aside in our budget for this year. So even in a worst case scenario, we have some money in this year's budget that could be applied toward these projects. And I think we've made a commitment to our staff and our community to provide as safe and secure buildings as we can. So that's my thinking on
I
this.
mean, I think it's hard if we look at this number and it came in higher than where any of us started, and I appreciate all the work that's been done to vet it and keep circling back to value engineering. The security is something that I don't think any of us could ever put a price tag on. So the number is what it is, and I just think it's important to reiterate that this is all driven by security and not aesthetics. This is not at all about redoing the front of the buildings in terms of how they appear. It's literally about keeping our students and our staff and the student team safe.
And I would say that, and Karen, you can speak to this much better than I, to respond to your market condition, weight element. I point blank asked the contractor walking around, if I push this 6 months, I said, you're going to spend more money in 6 months and more now, as they come to the design and the expectations of the district with the project. So I don't know if you have a comment there.
I think actually one of the efforts that we made to try and get the best number possible is a great example of this. So when we were working with that other small GC, one of the things that I was helping Kristen and Brian do is we're thinking about ways to actually redesign this. We actually redesigned this. It was almost like we cut the scope in half. And the volatility of the market, he was having people pull out of bids. They just weren't available, and their numbers were skyrocketing. So less scope actually came in way more. And it was like, this is a good exercise. Let's stick with what we had. This was the design that we wanted. We're lucky in this instance. We have a great relationship with these contractors that are out of the intermediate school, and they held their number, and we were able to buy the original scope. And I think that speaks to the volatility. People are just extremely busy. I know it seems insane. I see it every day. I'm dealing with manpower shortages, on a daily basis, and this is just the ramifications of that. So I know it doesn't feel that way, but being through the process, I'm actually very happy that we were able to get all of our scope. I know it was over budget to have those contractors hold that price.
Well, that speaks to your relationships and
Everybody.
getting them to hold.
It's been a very good project, and you are right, it has a lot to do with the relationship.
It makes sense for you to manage this project and for us to get it done.
Wanted to mention also to the board, as you guys alluded to, this will come into the board as a change order, is how we're seeing that happen, as provided by David Riley. And he did say there's the flexibility of payment with bond or PI. That was a little sorry. And however we would want to be able to appropriate that, just because it's a change order for the project, doesn't tie us to spending that through bond. So I just want to make sure the board was aware of that.
No, but it's a benefit because I think we made a commitment to the community that these bond proceeds of $31.5 million would fund improvements in all of our buildings. And so this is a specific example at Brady and the high school of how those proceeds are benefiting the students.
And out of the approximately 358, how much is high school, how much is Gurney?
That I can't tell you. In terms of hard construction costs, taking out any of the soft costs, the high school is 167, and in Gurney is 139. Correct.
Okay, so those are hard construction costs, right? So that's about like 290?
Correct.
Right, so there's a jump ball of about 60K, which is the soft cost.
So then in addition to that, we have some staffing, we have reimbursables, we have cleanup. I'm not having the contractors do the cleanup, I'm gonna do the cleanup through the contractor that's doing it at the intermediate school. I can manage it better. So that's about 10,000 there.
I asked for a CM contingency because there's no contingency left in our budget on this side, so there's a small CM contingency we could use if we needed to.
Yeah, so you have the hard cost that I just gave you, $10,000 in cleanup, $7,500 in a general trades allowance to handle the painting, any of that stuff that was not quantifiable. We do have CDI, that's how we insure our contractors, so there's a fee with that, it's $3,800. And like I said, we have reimbursables, which is printing, whenever I have to print out drawings or anything of that nature. All of our reimbursables with our bond and with our insurance is about $1,600. And then, as Chris said, I'm carrying a CM construction contingency of $81.60.
And that would come back to us if there wasn't any debt.
That's correct. Along with the allowance as well.
Right.
We're treating this just like we do it on the intermediate school. It's not a lump sum.
Which you and I are familiar with,
Yes.
but not everybody is.
And then we have fee. And our fee is the same as it is on the intermediate school. It's cheaper.
Okay, maybe I lost track of it, so it was about 100,000 delta to begin with. We had somebody else look at it, and we came back and re-scoped it, and where was the end number?
358.
358.
That's right enough.
Right, but what was the budget? What was the original, 258?
For the hard cost, the original budget was about 258, yes, slightly under 100,000. Hard cost. When we gave our hard cost budget, we don't normally include the staffing and expenditures in our hard cost budget.
And just to give a little context, we have a door system in there, which is, roughly maybe 28, I don't know what the number is, 28,000.
Yeah, when we received the drawings to budget, we had one drawing, and it was an architectural drawing. So, and then when we got the drawings to bid, they included technology, and some electrical. There was some items that weren't, I don't think the wheelchair lift that changed slightly too. So things shifted and changed.
That's another V, and
Yeah.
actually we had different wheelchair with scopes.
Right.
We cut that.
I was thinking that's another benefit of the project is allowing better accessibility into the high school.
Oh, absolutely.
In addition to security.
So that was a little bit different when we were doing the budget. It wasn't to that extent as it is now.
Do we know where we are with the interest on the bond? When do we get that money in? Maybe so.
And we could decide to use it for any of the same purposes other
fees at all, or they don't get to that is correct.
That's correct. You have about 700,000.
That has to be used in facilities.
Yes.
It normally would be.
As for the description.
Of the law.
Carrie, thank you for your work on this.
Sure.
Being here tonight as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on to, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to commend Ms. Lucan for her spreadsheet. She provided information to the board in advance of this meeting that shows us where we stand on the intermediate school construction project. So we're able to really watch down to the penny where we're at, and that gives us the ability to make these decisions, knowing that we have the funds to support them. So thank you so much for all of your work on that. It's really
I
helpful.
have that spreadsheet up, and your yellow highlighted number is 386.
Okay.
So we were talking earlier about what that number was, and it's not
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly go to item B. Item B is an annual notification to the Board of Education that the district is in compliance with Senate Bill 210, which is basically the USDA Smart Snack requirement, which dictates snacks and beverages that can be sold in our school buildings. I think really have to
No more
announce that to you.
Pepsi.
So I would be remiss in not sharing, and I'm sure that the administrative staff from the high school can weigh in on this, but the loss of bagels from a community perspective has been very difficult. There's a lot of hungry high school students that don't understand when bagels became unhealthy.
Duly noted. In fact, I know there's conversations between where the line stands, especially with Tiger Perk added, so.
Right, yeah.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, I think we're going to be doing some bagel work coming up.
All right, I'm going to jump to item C on the agenda, which is a presentation on the PBIS work that's been going on throughout the district. So, introduce Assistant Superintendent Lisa Shannon and high school science teacher Victor Puskis, who've been involved in this process as well. There's a lot of work that's been going into what's going to be presented to you tonight. You're going to hear about various recommendations coming forward to the Board of Education over the next month or so regarding some of this work. So,
Okay, thank you very much for having us today. Mr. Puskis was actually unable to be here, so I have asked Ms. Rossi to attend. She was a part of our original team, so when we get to a certain portion of the presentation, she'll come up and speak. So, first of all, I'd like to just draw your attention. This doesn't look like our typical cover slide, right? So, the Ohio Department of Education is a staunch supporter of positive behavior intervention and support. As a matter of fact, it is a requirement in the state of Ohio to make sure you do have a program or a framework rather designated as PBIS. So we have had a small team from each building go through training this school year, which entailed 4 visits to the Educational Service Center, and we've worked with school districts in the greater Cleveland area, which I was really thankful for because we worked with school districts very similar to ours in demographics. So it was nice to problem solve and hear challenges and maybe even attempt to find some solutions to some of the struggles we were having. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the meat of the presentation. Feel free, please, to just jump in with any questions. So as with anything, we want to make sure that we define a need for the work. And there were 4 sources of information that led us to know that PBIS was the right way to go. So about a year and a half ago, I believe we administered the culture survey to students, staff, and the community members within Chagrin Falls. Actually, let me fix that, the parents of students in Chagrin Falls. Out of that survey, we heard pretty loud and clear that we don't know what it is that we are seeking. We don't know if it has a name, but we do know we want a district-wide support system for our students' behavior and mental health. The instructional audit, if you recall, we had 2 retired administrators from the Hilliard Public School District, or Hilliard City Schools, come and conduct an audit of our school district, after which the district leadership team met and kind of skimmed through all of that, really taking notice that mental health was not included in that instructional audit. So with the district leadership team support, we added that as an area of need. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, made up of community members and staff members, they have identified the positive behavior intervention support as a need across our district. And then lastly, we did a mental health audit in September of this year that said, hey, PBIS is the first step. Let's get going on that. So wanted to give you the context for our work. So why PBS to begin with? It really actually has a very simple purpose, albeit a complex way to derive the purpose. So we want to really make sure that our schools are the most effective learning environments we can make them. Whether that means looking at facilities, which we do a great deal of and have this year with the new building going, but also looking at programs, looking at data, having a shared philosophy between buildings and among buildings. Working to make sure that how we act as adults is predictable, it's consistent, positive, and it's safe for our students, not only of course their physical health, but their emotional health as well. So as we talk about PBIS, I think it would be really important just to keep drawing back to the fact that PBIS, why is it important? It's because we want to have the most effective learning environment possible for our students. You know, when someone says behavior, you almost automatically think to what? I'm going to make this an engaging presentation. If I say behavior.
Acting out.
Okay. Anything else? Fights.
Negative,
right? I just encourage you to also think of behavior as possibly quiet, retreating, isolating, very introverted. It can very much be that. It typically derives from a skill set or a skill deficit, sometimes even a performance deficit. Clear case in point. We have many students in our district identified with social communication disabilities. We have to provide them with direct instruction on how to engage with one another. There is a marked discrepancy between how they are able to implement a skill versus a typical student without a deficit. So please know, I guess, when we talk about behaviors, we're talking about the whole gamut, and we know that many of those behaviors are a result of a skill or a performance deficit. Skills sometimes are taught out of context as well. When you're sitting down at a desk and you're doing some rote learning, which really doesn't happen much here in Chagrin Falls, thankfully, you want to make sure that you're connecting your new learning to authentic, organic, real-life experiences. And that just simply can't be done without paying attention to behavior when behavior is happening. Lastly then, skills are often not consistently rewarded. And I'm not a fan of that word, rewarded. I want to say acknowledged, reinforced, encouraged, right? Those would be words that I would maybe insert in place of reward. Because when we think of reward, we usually think of an extrinsic, something of extrinsic value. So, we want to look at our student behavior as well as our adult behavior and change the way we as adults interact with our students. In order for a student to learn a new behavior and an adult to learn a new behavior, on average it takes you about 8 times to learn something new. And that's for a typical learner, not one with perhaps a disability. And then to unlearn or to replace a behavior, takes you about 28 times to do that. So I met a lovely neighbor here of our community. Yoga is a passion. And you know, it took me a lot of days in a row to make yoga a practice rather than just something I went to do, right? So I replaced my complacent behavior with a more active one. It took me a long time to do that too. So what do we know about behavior? We had already mentioned it could be governed by its context, obviously. You're confronting a student maybe that is not engaged and that student becomes defensive for whatever reason, those behaviors can come out of context, I skipped down to bullet number 3, so forgive me. You know, it can be influenced by factors that are completely out of our control. You know, mom is sick at home, not doing well. Child was up helping a little sibling and it had to come to school this morning. You know, completely in disarray, perhaps from the schedule being changed. Worried about their parent. A variety of reasons. Behavior, I'm going to go back up now. Behavior can be interpreted as functional. So Mrs. Garvey mentioned reinforcing, right? You can have positive as well as negative reinforcement. You're still getting something out of that behavior. So examining the function. What is the purpose of the behavior? What we do know through PBIS and our training is that if you teach behaviors explicitly to students, the behaviors you want them to know, you monitor those behaviors and you provide them feedback, your environment is going to change because student behavior will change. So this was a common slide that our facilitators drew our attention to pretty frequently. You get the behavior to which you pay the most attention, right? I mentioned sometimes students, adults, children, anyone, sometimes they are just happy with any kind of attention. And so when you reinforce negative attention, that's the behavior you're going to continue to get. So we need to flip that on its side, upside down and inside out. That's our goal. So I guess in our work, it's really important to know that, you know, students have free will. Everyone, we all have free will. No one person can make another person do something. It's through the environment you establish, the relationships you build, the trust that you create. That's what will help change behavior to create a positive learning environment. So we use this umbrella as a really great way to say, in Chagrin Falls, we have all of these wonderful interventions going on in the district and partnerships with outside agencies and committees formed within the district. We have a lot of really great things happening in this district. There's pockets of expertise that's being shared regularly. There are new ideas being vetted and tried regularly. So it's great. But we need a system for organizing all of this, which leads us to explain exactly what is positive behavior intervention and support. So I have a slide later on. I kind of want to let that cat out of the bag now. But you know, PBIS is not a canned program. It's not at all. Rather, it is a framework for organizing in a systemic way and in a systematic way the resources that you have. It's the selection of the evidence-based interventions that you select based on data and the interpretation of that data and the analysis of that data. It's multi-tiered, it's on a continuum that is fluid in nature. It also addresses all students, every student across the district.
Lisa, just going back a slide, 2 things come to mind that could be added. One is the Club Connect, which is
For sure.
student-driven.
Yep,
And Tiger Prep in general, I didn't know if we want to.
Definitely.
I feel like that should be as robust as possible, and we have other
we have so many other
Okay.
things going on. I really just took a sampling
Okay.
for the purpose of the presentation, but you're right. But that's actually, I'm glad you bring that up because that kind of helps lead me into this slide. I think the pyramid is a pretty familiar visual tool for all of you as it relates very well to the academic RTI approach. One way to think of PBIS as a framework is to think of it on the pyramid itself. If you notice, this pyramid on the left is dedicated to the academic systems, and on the right then the behavior. It's defined by 3 separate categories, the green being universal, the yellow being targeted, and then the red being the intensive. I guess just to kind of draw back to some of what I was hearing from Mrs. Brose's comments, we have a lot going on, and as part of the work that we're going to do in the upcoming year or two is to really plot all that we have to offer onto this continuum so that not only is it a visual support, but we can coordinate all of our efforts to the one goal, which is to create this great learning environment. We have a great one. We want to enhance it. So I listed as examples from each tier just some things that are already happening in the district. So examples of universal behavioral supports. Those are, for all students. We actually have the intermediate school here today. They're going to present on PACS, which is a universal intervention for all students that would fit in level green on the behavior side of the pyramid. Responsive classroom with Kearney is also supportive as a universal tool.
The middle school, what is the program name that's used in the middle school?
The middle school and high school have not researched I want to say canned, I know that has a negative connotation. They've not researched anything in particular for their grade level, but they have implemented some very positive interventions and positive supports. And I think it's really important to note that you don't have to adopt something already prepared. You can implement your own ideas.
So that's hello in the middle school, is that what it's called?
That might be one of their strategies that they're using.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's all been created from within?
All been created, yeah, based on really strong research.
Start with hello was through the Sandy Hook Promise organization, much like we have the see something, say something for the high school. It's just for grade levels, but that's more for school safety and targeting students in that way through the Sandy Hook Promise organization. All still can fall underneath the framework.
Yep, and that example would fit in the green universal section. To give you an example of a targeted support that we already utilize in the school district, we have partnered with the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio for what is called Family Support Specialist support. We've had a few families in our district struggle with very personal issues, whether it be a health-related item or a financial item, and the person at the ESC can work with our families and help provide them with resources that are typically community-based. So we know that if a student is at home and their basic needs are being attended to, they're more likely to be ready to learn and come to school in a happier, healthier way. An example of an intensive support is that we have teams from each building that are trained to de-escalate a dangerous situation with a student who perhaps is physically out of control. Dale Chapin is our trainer for that, and we're really thankful that he continues to do that. Again, just a sampling of what we have. Our goal then is to continue to build this pyramid and really pay attention to our targeted and our intensive interventions, because we feel that that's the place that we may be lacking right there. My slide here that I alluded to. So positive behavior, PBIS, is not a packaged curriculum. That's what PACS and responsive classroom are. Or that's a descriptive intervention, and it's not a camp program at all. So school districts can really work with PBIS and make it very personal to the culture in their own building. So there are 9 essential elements to implementing PBIS, and throughout our work over the last year, since October, I think was the first meeting, or first training rather, since October, we have really learned and touched on every essential element here. And I do want to take a little time with each because there's a natural divide here that I'd like to talk about. So in order for PBIS to be effective as a framework of coordinated efforts, you have to have administrative commitment, and consistent involvement. Later on, I have the list of staff members that have committed hours upon hours of their time to this work. And as an administrative team, we have really kind of fleshed out where we'd like to take this for next year. You have to have established team structures. The district has come to a consensus on 3 common behavioral expectations. There must be systematic teaching of expected behaviors. You can't just say, hey, this is what we want you to do, and not teach them what we want them to do. There needs to be a system for reinforcing or acknowledging those positive behaviors, as well as then correcting the negative behaviors that you no longer wish to have. The last few then involve database decision-making, which we tend to look at our attendance data, our discipline referrals, even staff absences. Those are some of the data points that we will look at. The coordination of it must allow for that tiered intervention, which we feel that we have that pretty well, our staff is pretty well informed as to what that tiered system looks like because of the strong academic supports that we offer. And then it also helps to maintain culturally responsive practices in our district. Again, it's an all-encompassing program. So with these being the 9 essential elements, I just want to highlight for you our 2-year plan. In year number 1, which will start in August, we really want to develop the foundational work, which is sharing a common language with the entire staff, and I mean entire, bus drivers, groundskeeping crews, teachers, aides, cafeteria workers. Love to work with the board on gaining that common language. We will create resources this year. We will make sure as a PBIS team that we're meeting monthly and starting to refine the work that we need to do as a PBIS group. In year 2, that will be our formal kickoff, where we're including students and families. Data will be a little more consistent for us because we will have had a year under our belt to really know what we want to look at. We'll refine our tiered supports, which we are hoping to include mental health support as a tier 2, tier 3 level. I don't need to go through all of this, but I do want to share that these are the details of what we would like to offer. If you look at bullet number 3, it talks about a tiered fidelity inventory. This is a 15 attribute scale, I guess, that you can self-measure. As a PBIS team, we did this in October of 2018. We are at about 15% implementation. At that time, we were at 15%. This is the tool we will use to measure our growth and our progress toward full implementation. I think you'll notice when you have a chance to look at this in greater detail that really we're trying to build the understanding of the staff of what PBIS is, what those expectations are, and how we plan to go about it. So at this time, I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Rossi. She has the last few, or almost the last few slides.
So with all of the information that you have already received, we would like, I guess, in order to present to you what this will look like here in Chagrin, is Chagrin integrity. Using PBIS as part of the language with students and staff can be cumbersome. We wanted to apply it to our students, our staff, our community in a catchy way. And what that looks like for us based on the expectations that we established as a district. And I can tell you that trying to coordinate 4 buildings, all of those staff members to all be on the same page was not an easy task. But we all came to the conclusion that Chagrin integrity was what we all wanted our students and staff members to have. And students will show their Chagrin integrity. And these are the common expectations that we developed. The first one was being safe, being responsible, and being respectful. And PBIS is all formatted by positive behavior intervention supports. The verbiage and the language that we use is always positive and affirmative in nature. And so these were the 3 common expectations that we developed. What those look like in each building will, for the most part, relatively be the same. What the language looks like at Gurney and at the intermediate school might be different than what I would use at the high school with our students, but those expected behaviors will remain the same. And how we apply that is going to be based on particular areas maybe in the building, right? So what does it look like to be safe in the hallways at the high school versus what it looks like to be safe in the hallways at the intermediate school? Slight change in what we expect in behavior, and so that needs to continuously be taught. So an example, let's say for the high school commons, if any of you have ever been there during lunchtime, being safe in the high school commons, an example of positive language we thought was student friendly was keeping your hands to self. You know, that seems surprising at the high school level, but for some reason kids like to touch each other and touch other people's things, and we have found that sometimes that can cause problems. If they do see something, we want them to say something. We want to continue to use the same language, positive language, and that's quite similar across all 4 buildings. Keep exterior doors closed, right? As opposed to saying don't open the door, it's keeping those exterior doors closed and using positive affirmative language in that way. And that is ways in which students can be safe. Another example was being responsible is clean up after yourself. So what this looks like in a larger matrices is going to be an internal document that we will use and share with staff. But for students, we're going to model the expected behaviors. And I think you expect elementary students to be taught, you know, certain behaviors. And when they get to the high school, we feel like, well, they should know this already, right? They should know how to clean up after themselves on the commons. But you would be surprised that they don't sometimes, and a gentle, friendly reminder can be helpful. So what the staff would do is demonstrate examples of expected and unexpected behavior. So being responsible, potentially cleaning up after yourself, means demonstrating throwing out the trash away from your seat, right? Oftentimes all of our students think that they're LeBron James and they can make the shot from 10 yards away. Unfortunately, they are not all that talented, and the lunch sometimes ends up on the floor. So we would model for students that they should throw all items away by walking over to the trash can and disposing of the items and then wiping down the table afterwards. I'm explicitly giving them the expected behavior. I'm telling them what I want them to do and what this should look like at a high school level. The same would be done at all of the other buildings based on the age level of the students. We found that just based on discipline data, that kids really like the cookies in the commons and sometimes will forget to pay for them. So that came about, and we determined that being respectful in the commons meant you have to wait in line and pay for all of your items. So what we would want students to do as an example would be, as an unexpected behavior, would be to demonstrate taking the cookies and forgetting potentially, and attempting to walk out. And we would provide an example of redirecting that student to go back and pay for the items. So this is just a small sample of this particular area. We have done something quite similar to this and modeled essentially these mini lessons, or whatever you'd like to call them, for the locker room, the hallways, the restroom, the classroom. Every environment within each of the buildings will have something quite similar to this. And it will be on the responsibility of our staff, the administration, and our students to continue to reinforce and to use a common language so that it becomes habit.
Amanda?
Yes.
This is the bus as well?
Yes.
As a livable classroom?
Correct.
Right.
So what that looks like at Gurney in the intermediate school, they may get more bus reports potentially than I do, but at the high school I can tell you that parking and driving is one area for us that we will focus on a lot. Just
I'm going to say I'm walking and biking, right?
Yes.
Yes. As you're accessing, a lot of these things I think the crossing guards are doing.
Correct. And so for us, I think identifying all of those environments, and then we all, I think, established what this looks like 24/7, I think was one of our categories. What does this mean to be a Chagrin student at all times? And so that was kind of our catch-all category. And I'm going to turn this back over to Lisa.
Along the lines of the 24/7 and at all times, do we have plans to introduce this to parents?
Yes, at the kickoff, yeah, the year we do the kickoff, which will be at the start of the 2021 school year, we'll be ready to, I think we'll feel like we have our feet under us with this, we're ready to go. Our PBIS team will have been meeting for a year, evaluating data, and our teachers will have common language at that point. I think that going back, and I only need to go back a few slides, I think that we feel very comfortable as a PBIS team all the way to here right now. So at the start of next school year, you'll see visual supports throughout the district for every environment with the expected behaviors listed. We're going to start next year on growing the capacity of the staff to teach those expected behaviors. And it can be quick and very organic, you know, when in the moment when it's happening. It doesn't need to be intrusive.
Do you have any plans to benchmark behavior as it stands today before you start, and so that you can document change in improvement?
Yes and no. We currently use 2 different systems to document data across the district, and so as one of our action steps in the fall, we're moving everybody onto the same system, so that way we can look at data in the same way. Okay. And then lastly, I just wanted to share with you that school districts that implement PBIS frameworks, they coordinate their efforts, show a reduction in behavior problems, increased academic performance, increased attendance, improved perception, not only of safety, but efficiency and efficacy. So there's a lot of really good work that comes out of this, and there's a ton of research behind it. Wanted to acknowledge that the PBIS team, these are the folks that have been trained as PBIS facilitators, and I need to give Victor a shout out because it was his idea for the Chagrin Integrity, and everyone loved it. Under the iCare team, a group of individuals helped the district really research some mental health supports that could be used in tiers 2 and 3. And then lastly, the last 2 slides talk about the different laws and codes that support PBIS. At this time, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to talk those through. I really have to say, as long as this was, I really feel like we just dipped our toe in the water with you. So I could uncover a whole lot more, but I won't.
I see on the ODE website that there is an Ohio School Climate State Grant opportunity. Is that something that the district's?
We looked at that. It's for kindergarten through 3rd grade, and we really don't fit the demographic of applicant that they are seeking.
We can let you know that since the district was awarded the safety grant, most of the costs that we have used this year, whether it was for training of staff
or attendance of subs,
was paid for, will be paid for through the school safety grant. So purchases for packs, even for next year, for supplies and things like that.
Responsive classroom training next year.
For next year. So these are all ways in which we've tried to use grant funding to support this program.
Is the school resource officer, Mike Baldwin, also part of your team?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Have you identified the tiered supports yet that you want to use for the targeted and intensive?
Some of them we have. So for instance, we can continue using the family support specialists through the ESC. So if we have families who need resources, we have a contact person. We are also hoping to bring a school-based mental health professional onto the district, more to help tiers 2 and 3. They would work with small groups around really targeted topics for maybe 6 to 8 weeks, and then hopefully helping those students gain tools in their own personal toolbox. And then they will also see students in a one-on-one way. and then making an evaluative decision about whether or not that student needs to have more intensive support maybe outside of what the school can offer. So those are two things that we are really researching and looking at right now. And really, right now, we are out kind of shopping costs for all of that.
There's a tremendous amount of work in a large initiative, and one of the things I want to, I guess, bring to the board's attention now, we'll talk more about it, we'll talk about strategic planning. You're not going to see this district as a result of the strategic plan in 6 months completely shift direction. A lot of the work that we're doing is, you're starting to see is going over 2 to 3 years, and all of that will fold into that plan. This framework, I think, really brings some clarity to a lot of the work, but it also helps point to where some gaps and where we need to spend some more time. So I appreciate all of the work and the information tonight. This isn't a one and done. We're going to have to see this anymore. This is going to constantly be coming back around. So as a board member, kind of understanding that broad framework and bring programs and initiatives to the table, hopefully you can now see how those fit into what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
All right, so while we're on that note, we're going to allow Chagrin Falls Intermediate School to give an update on PACS, which certainly, as you saw, fell under this umbrella of PBIS. So introduce Mrs. Reed, and I'll let you introduce your team.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to be here and to share with you about our PACS program. I have Susan Smith and Heidi Stepalonis here as representatives from our Encore team who have really spearheaded this work in our building starting even into last year. So I just want to take a few minutes to sort of introduce the program to you and talk a little bit about kind of the backstory behind how we got to this point. And then I'm going to turn it over to the ladies here to talk really about the nuts and bolts of the program. As you know, of course, the last 2 years have been what's a transition for the intermediate school, right? And for many, transition and change can be really challenging. For us as a staff, it really has been an opportunity, a positive opportunity for us to pause and to reflect and to consider, who are we as a building and identify what do we want to be going forward. And through that, those conversations, we really identified as a goal for us to really focus on establishing positive school culture and climate across our building. Really making sure that we had shared, clear, and consistent expectations that were built on positive relationships between students and staff. But at the same time, we really wanted to have, identified strategies for teaching kids about self-management, self-regulation, and how to handle collective responsibility for behaviors. And so when we started these conversations last year, I obviously started to dig into some research to see what other schools were doing and just to see what was out there. As I said, our Encore team really spearheaded this work. And I really started with a book study that they did together talking about behavior and how to handle students at those different tiers that Lisa alluded to. And from that, it developed into sharing of articles and reading articles, and to then delving into much deeper research. The team did site visits, so when it visited other schools, they interviewed staff and students, and ultimately came upon PACS as a possible program. We have, through some relationships with the Nordonia schools, were able to hear about this program. There's a former administrator there who is now currently a PACS partner in Summit County. Through his work at Nordonia, he had brought forth this program to some of the elementary schools there with great success. And so our team was able to go visit. It was Lee Eaton Elementary School in Nordonia, saw the program in place, got to see teachers, talk to students, and just came back really abuzz with excitement about the program, mostly because they saw not only the success, but they really saw it as a great fit for our building. As we looked into the program more, I think what really sold us on it was the research behind the program. PACS has been around for over 40 years, believe it or not. I think it's a new term for a lot of us, but it's been around a lot. And there's a lot of really compelling research
about the success of schools that have implemented this program across all grades. And so that really sold us into looking into it. So as we started this school year, of course, we trained our entire staff. That included our admin team, our office staff, our teachers, all of our teachers, and all of our paraprofessionals, including our lunch aides in this program. Again, our onboard team really kind of led the implementation of that this year through working with Curtis Howell, our assistant principal, developed an implementation calendar, helped provide feedback to teachers, even did some informal training with our staff, and they've been managing our student behavior data as well. So it's really a good thing. PACS really is, as Lisa said, it's a universal support system for all students. It is a set of strategies, really, made of a variety of components, a very comprehensive program, with some very funny names, as a matter of fact. You might have heard some of the funny names, like spleens and Granny's Wacky Prizes, vision casting. These are terms that are used as part of the PACS program. When we talk about our presentation today, we're going to go into those in a little bit more detail. But really, they are meant to, again, teach our kids how to behave, how to have ownership of their behavior, and help to develop the expectations for their learning environment, which is really important. Today we want to talk about our implementation. We want to talk about where we are now as we head into the end of our first year. And we want to talk a little bit about our goals going forward as we see the continuation of this program for our building. I'll turn it over to Heidi.
Like the clicker. I'm so excited. I'm also nervous too, I just have to say. And everybody's talking off the cuff and not reading their notes, but so that I stay on track, I'm going to be looking at my graph paper notes. We heard a lot about PBIS, and I got excited all over again hearing you guys talk about it because I don't know, I just think it's so obvious and so wonderful. But we're going to speak to PACS, not on the X, and PACS is actually a Latin word that I think is more correctly pronounced PAX, and it means peace. But the actual, when you say the whole sort of motto of PACS is to promote peace, productivity, health, and happiness. And sometimes you're going to hear the PACS, sort of strategies referred to as a PACS good behavior game. And I think some people got a little confused when they heard what the PACS good behavior game, but that's sort of a trademark that's out there too. So here's where I start reading. PACS is a collaborative process between students and teachers that creates a nurturing environment at school. I feel like I'm going to say a lot of what Lisa already just said, which is why I'm so excited. An environment that consistently and positively reinforces pro-social behaviors, limits problematic behaviors, reduces toxic influences, and increases psychological safety and flexibility. And I just think that really sort of sums it up, so I wanted to read that and not blow it. So here we stole your umbrella on the slide because it's so good. You notice we changed it, and above the umbrella, it does say PBIS is the framework, and there we are, PACS, and that's totally true. So PACS just fits so nicely, the set of strategies fits so nicely under this framework. And Lisa was talking about some of the same stuff I'm saying, but PACS uses data-driven decision-making to provide teachers and administrators with practical tiered intervention strategies so that they can implement PBIS in the classroom. That's all the same stuff that you were saying. In terms of the philosophy here, what I love is that PACS teaches students to self-regulate, to work together for common goals, to focus on a positive classroom environment, positive productivity that they actually get to co-create, which I think is so important. And we did look at Gurney's responsive classroom. We did check that out, thinking about should we bring that up to CFIS. But when we saw PACS in action at Nordonia, when we really kind of dove more into it, it seemed like the more age-appropriate, kind of the next step, the next level, just seemed like some of the silly words and the common language just kind of fit an intermediate school student. And there are lots of connections between responsive classroom and PACS. It's just, again, just the strategies. What I also love is when we use PACS, when we do take that self-regulation to the next level for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, students actually get to predict desired behavior before they even do an activity in class. Then that is monitored during the activity, that behavior. And then, I think what I like the most is at the end, you get to come back together and reflect. How did we do? So you predict, you monitor, and you reflect. And by having students engage in that process several times throughout the day, they're really able to kind of internalize it and self-define, self-monitor. And also they're able to better reinforce the reduction of those behaviors that interfere with any kind of goal of peace, productivity, health, and happiness. And then my last slide is the research. And I found a really cool site. I could have gone on. There were like 21 pages. But I just love that the strategies and hacks have been subjected to multiple randomized controlled trials, numerous peer-reviewed studies over 4 decades, it was already mentioned. And what I really like are the randomized control group studies that have long-term follow-up. I mean, they were following kids in elementary school into their 20s beyond college. So they really have some compelling research behind PACS. It's evidence-based, and it even caught the attention of the Mental Health and Addiction Services of Ohio. And if you're familiar with their 21st Century Cures Act, they secured federal funding to help fight the opioid epidemic. And some of that money is being used to train teachers in PACS because they do recognize that this early intervention strategies used in the PACS program are so successful.
Before I get started, I'd like to actually give a shout out to Chris Woofter here, because last year Heidi and I were sitting in my room and we were taking your graduate course on PBIS. And we're sitting there eating lunch and we're discussing a presentation that we had to create for our PBIS project. And Chris happened to walk in talking about building design and whatnot, and then we started talking. He's like, what are you guys working on? And then we told him. He's like, you need to go check out Lee Eaton. They do this game thing. He goes, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but we just kind of looked at him and we're like, and we were a bit confused. He's like, no, seriously, you got to check it out. It's pretty cool. So I just want to say thank you, because that's how we met, the connection with Lee Eaton, what is his name? Bill Holst at ESC. Oh my gosh, what am I forgetting his name? Principal. Oh.
Yes,
It's escaping my name. Okay, well, it's escaping my name right now.
Keep going.
Schrembeck, Rob Schrembeck. But wonderful, wonderful. And I've been out there twice now. And it's just been very, very positive. And even our last time, we took a whole bunch of us teachers. And we've had a lot of conversations back and forth, he and I. And he's very interested in even teaming up the 2 school districts and working together, the 2 buildings and working together with us. Okay, so I'm going to actually start getting in on the actual, what we call PACS kernels. And you'll notice that some of them are bold because those are the ones that we decided to really delve in and focus this year with our teachers and really get those implemented. Now, some of us are doing all of the kernels, but we just want to make sure at least this first year we all had a set of certain ones. So the first one is called PACS Vision. And this is like what is extremely important, and this is where you discuss with the children, the teacher and the children discuss together what they want to see more of, hear more of, do more of, feel more of in the classroom, or in the lunchroom, or in the hallway, so it's wherever you are in the building. And those are called the PACS behaviors, or the positive pro-social behaviors. Then we talk about, okay, well, what do you want to see less of, hear less of, do less of, and feel less of? And those are what we call the spleens. And spleens, yes, it's just a made-up word, and yes, every time you type it, it changes to spleen, but it's spleens. And a spleen, it's just the behavior that we don't want to see. And they chose it, they created it because it doesn't have any connotation to any other program or anything else in the English language. So then after you create this vision, you do it at the start of the school year, and it's done in all of the areas in the building. So kind of like what we were talking about with the PBIS and the matrices also. Then as you're teaching, the different activities that you are working with the students, you create these mini visions within your period that you have with the children. Okay, today guys, we're going to be playing the instruments. What are 3 things we want to see more of? What are 3 things we want to see less of?
and then you discuss that, and you do it very quickly, and you put it on the board, we all agree upon it, and then we go. And at the end of the class, it's very important, but that's where we talked about predicting. So this is the predicting stage, and then you're also monitoring through the spleens. And then at the end, it's very important, at the end of the lesson, you go back, you review, and you reflect, okay, what were our PAX behaviors? What were our spleen behaviors? And you go through that. PAX quiet is a universal cue for attention. And this is used for teachers to let the students know, hey, I've got some more important information I need to give you. And yes, you are seeing us all lovely, wearing these lovely blue harmonicas. And yes, one thing that we'll do, we don't necessarily use the harmonica all the time, but it's what we do is this what, say the kids are working and they're doing group work and they're all talking, and you're like, oh, I need to tell them this. I have something else, another direction for them. So the teacher would do this. And then the students immediately, they stop what they're doing, they look at their teacher, and they put their hand up and PAX. And it's so quick. It's amazing how quickly they turn and look at you. Then you put your hand down and you say, oh guys, I would like you to do this also. This is the next step. The amount of time that it takes to transition now is unbelievable. It has cut down to such a small amount. I'm just completely amazed by it. I even have the fourth graders, and I know other teachers have said it too. Fourth graders know when some of those transitions are coming. So I'll be doing whatever, and then I'll turn around, and fourth graders are already like this. Wait, that's amazing. And I said, thank you so much for helping me. And then we just move on. Another one that we focused on this year was PAX Voices, and I know also with PBIS, because I even talked to some of the PBIS teams, the Green team also, is using the universal scale of acceptable voice levels. So in the PAX program, you have a 0-inch voice, and that's a voice that you are not talking at all. Okay, so you think of a ruler yardstick, and so for instance, this would be like in the hallway. Okay, so let's use a 0-inch voice as we're transitioning here in the middle school. A 3-inch voice would be like a whisper, a 3-foot would be more your normal talking, and 10-foot, we usually tell the kids that's playgrounds. And then what's nice about this is it's universal, and then all the teachers can say, hey guys, we're gonna do this activity, you're gonna do group work. What kind of voice should we be using? Do you want 3-inch or do you want 3-foot? And then we'll have a quick discussion, and then we'll say, well, I work better with this, I work better with this, let's come upon an agreeable level. And it's just, again, another system that we all can use that same language. PAX Leader is another one that we are focusing on this year, and it's basically, this one's not too difficult to use. It's basically a quick remind me, show me, what would a PAX leader do if they were to get the materials? Remind me how they would do that, show me how they would do that. And that ties directly into Gurney's responsive classroom also. Another one that we're focusing on this year is the Granny's Wacky Prizes. And this is a fun, quick, like usually 30 seconds to 90 seconds, quick little brain break or release or something fun that you can do with the kids that once they've met an expectation, you can go ahead and do it with the kids. So we all have these little lunch bag looking things, and it says Granny's Wacky Prizes, and you pull out one or you have a kid pull out one, and it's anything that the teachers have made up. It can be something as quick and easy as turn to your neighbor, you have 30 seconds of thumb war. So they'll go, at a thumb war. One that I have that the kids absolutely love is I have a little tiger, and I call it tiger toss. Well, kid stands in the middle, and then everybody's scattered around the room. They have 30 seconds, sometimes it's a minute, but they have 30 seconds to try to toss this tiger around the room. But the hard part is that I make them say the person's name before they toss it to the person. Then the kids sit down. If they make it all in under 30 seconds, they stand back up and they go again. So it's amazing watching the kids just have fun and be rewarded with something that doesn't cost money. And they have a lot of fun. We love to play, and sometimes I'm there like, what about me? What about me? And it gives them that release. So they're not always having to sit and be perfect all the time. This is their release and their fun. And then the Granny Wackies prizes fit under the positive reinforcement. But we also have two things that we're doing here at CFIS, and we have PAX Leaders of the Month. That's basically like our Student of the Month, and is what we do is
the academic teachers choose one boy and one girl for their grade level, and then the encore teachers, we choose one child per grade level. And then at the end of the month, we call them down on the announcements, and then they each receive one of these PAX bands that we had made, PAX leader band, and then they get their picture taken, and then it's placed in the hallway and on our newsletter too. Then we also do a PAX leader celebration, which is where we send an invite to the parents via mail, real mail, and they come for a celebration in the PAC lobby, and we have refreshments, and then we have an official certificate that we actually emailed the PAX Institute about. Hey, do you have any PAX certificates? We're going to kind of implement this. Well, the director of the PAX Institute, the founder, he actually went ahead and created the PAX Leader of the Month for us, and now it's on their site, so I thought that was pretty cool. But it's just another way to reward the students. Another thing that we're doing is we are keeping track of behavior data, so that's what we call our SPLEAM data. Remember, a SPLEAM is anything, any kind of behavior that you don't necessarily want to see. The kids don't want to see, we don't want to see. It's done once a month, and it's kind of done under the radar. The kids are kind of picking up on it now, though, when they see it with the clipboard standing in the hallway looking at them, and they know what you're doing now, but at the beginning of the year they had no clue. So you'll see that way back in August, this was our baseline. This is before we introduced any of the language or any of the very specific expectations or did any of the visions with the kids. This is where we stood, okay? Then, and this includes every area in the building, even lunch and recess hallways, everywhere. Then by November, we had gone down drastically, and then this is where we sat at the last one in March. So it's really making an impact and a positive impact on the kids, and we're even seeing kids helping each other more, kids being kind to each other. It's been a great program, and I was trained last year, and I started it last year, and I can tell you, my classroom always ran smoothly, but the amount of engagement that these children have now has gone out of the roof. I mean, it's just been very, very exciting to see. I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Reed.
I think another really positive thing is, I know Lisa, you talked about this a little bit in your presentation too, the matter of efficiency, but the amount of time that our teachers have gotten back instructionally because the transitions are being more efficient, because the kids are more engaged, has been exponential. So a lot of teachers, instead of leaving the class feeling exhausted and frustrated, teachers are excited about the time spent and the engagement that's happening in the class. And a lot of that is due to some of these controlled situations that we maybe felt were out of control previously, if that makes sense. So we wanted to take a moment and celebrate a little bit our staff and the fact that we have really made so much progress with this program in just a short amount of time. Change, as I said, can be really daunting and challenging, and I'm just so proud of our staff for just going with it and accepting this. It can be a very overwhelming program. Like I said, there's lots of components. We barely scraped the surface on what the PAX program is tonight. But everybody is on board, and we have a lot of really positive experiences this year to celebrate, and our staff has shared some quotes that we wanted to share with you. I think one that really stands out is actually the one.
Yeah, the one.
I don't want to get ahead. I want to really have a chance to read these awesome quotes. But there is one that comes up that really comments about our students' behavior outside of the school.
That it's transferring into other places.
So the fact that we're seeing things transfer to other places, we're seeing, improvements in more chaotic areas like the cafeteria around recess. Those are things that really are, I think, our biggest litmus test of how successful we're doing. So I'm just really proud of our staff. I'm proud of our students. I'm so excited, especially when I see the work that we're doing as a district, to see how well this just fits into that. And I think we've already started laying a lot of that groundwork in our building for the work that's going to come ahead. So that's really exciting. So as you get a chance to read this last one, this is the first quote here is the one that talks about outside of the school. But we're happy to answer any questions too, anything that we didn't touch on. I'm happy to try to answer those questions for you. So.
When this was first presented to us in the beginning of the school year, I was very excited because the culture in that building is something, as a board member, I've been approached about by parents and questioning, like, you know, is it something that's changed in the students or something, like, what's going on? And I've heard a lot of positive feedback about the cultural change, and to see the numbers of the transformation within the 6th grade class is great, because that will continue with that. But also, holistically, it's such a great example to me of what Lisa was talking about in how, you know, this cultural behavioral change really has a universal impact on the whole building now. And you're saying that, you know, the teachers are noticing it in the transition time, and it's benefiting them, and I'm hearing it from parents, and it seems like a great program, and thank you all for putting your time into it.
Yeah, we're excited for next year as we really want to delve into these other kernels, as they're called, or components of the program. A lot of people have a lot more confidence starting day one, whereas this year we're kind of slowly implementing, I guess, slowly rolling it out. But we really want to dig into these other kernels. I think we can do a lot more with our data collection. We've already talked about having more site visits, not only having Nordonia and the teachers come to our building, but for us to go there. We've had, as a part of our team, we have the Encore representation, but we also had our BLT go, our building leadership team, and we identified 3 teachers in the building, 1 at each grade level, as PACS teacher leaders who have volunteered to kind of get additional training and to kind of be a part of these conversations. So they were able to go to Nordonia also, and that was really impactful when they came back, because they were on the front lines, you know, in the classrooms as resources for other staff members.
And the Encore teachers have also been going into their classrooms to support them and give them some ideas and, you know, give them shout-outs for things that they're doing well, and give suggestions on why don't you try this here and try that there. We've even gone in and observed full lessons with some of them that said, hey, I wouldn't mind you coming in. And then we've also had 3 teachers that have also come in and observed me teach like all day also. And it's just starting to really, like, everybody's getting really excited about it.
I like that too, because it takes the stress out. There isn't that feeling of evaluative measure. Teachers are comfortable asking questions that, you know, of each other, and they almost value that. They value that feedback more than they would for me, even though I also try to provide feedback to them. I think just that peer connection is so important. So that's been really exciting. So we're just hoping to continue to build off of that as we can for next year.
So I'm reminded of one of our former school board members told me to look for catching a student doing something right. And I love that you have like the student of the month, that type of thing. I have a couple of follow-ups that kind of relate to that. One is, are there measures, are you thinking about in the future having students nominate other students?
That's actually also part of the toodles that you saw up there.
Exactly.
Some teachers have done the toodles a bit.
Okay.
Not all of us are there during the Encore classes. It can be kind of tough, but we're trying to figure out how to incorporate it next year. The toodle is where you kind of give a shout out to, a child can give one to a child. It's like a written little note. A teacher can give it to a student can give it also to a teacher. There are some teachers that are using it. I think Catherine Owen is, and the kids love it. The kids love it. And I even had a child share one with me the other day that another child wrote about it. It was amazing.
Yeah, toodles are meant to be the opposite of tattles.
Yes.
That's where they come from. And we have a toodle board
I
in
think
our...
Dr. Seuss was involved.
we have a toodle board in our workroom, and
Okay.
teachers are invited to share toodles about other staff, which is a nice way just to connect that. So we're trying to build more of those.
That's great, because it reinforces, this isn't just about them trying to press their teachers. This is about them supporting each other in that element. And then the other question I had that's kind of related, and Lisa, you may want to chime in on this, is the measurement piece seems to be still measuring undesirable behaviors. And, they say people will live to what you measure, right? Or I think one of your quotes in one of your slides was that
You get the attention to
what you, so if you're in the hallway documenting negative behaviors, maybe consider, if maybe this is coming, documenting the positive behaviors and the improvement that you've seen in the positive behavior. It may be more difficult to get at, which is why we don't do that. But even in your program too, I feel like the measures were more.
Well, as far as PBIS, part of the acknowledgement system, just in general, believes in celebrating the positives. And so typically as part of the acknowledgement system, you develop a way to do that. And so it is something that as a PBIS team we'll need to think through. We're not there yet, but that's what we're hoping to use next year to do, just to make sure that we get all of those components that are not get kind of shored up and really have a good system in place.
Well, I figured it was on the horizon.
One of the things that the PACS trainer that I went to and had a session with, I actually was part of the Ohio Cares grants, so the school district didn't have to pay for it. When I went, the one thing that she said was, don't water the weeds. And that has just stuck with me. Pay attention to the kids that are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and those kids are going to all of a sudden change. If you just stop paying attention to the negative behaviors, and it does, it works. And the more you give the positives, the more the other behaviors are just going to start going away, and they do.
And that's where that peer accountability comes in. When we're talking about negative behaviors at all, there's no identification of who's performing, it's all universal. So these are things and that's nice because kids, we've implemented a new thing called district taxes in the classroom, where those are the kids that we're measuring spleens on. Nobody knows who it is. Of course, everybody is like, oh, it's me. I got to hold myself to the standard. And it's really those kinds of things where they're almost holding each other accountable for things that will build up.
So even when you go back and you do the review at the end of class and you talk about, okay, what were the spleens that we had? You never identified who caused the spleen, and the children never do. But what's interesting is that some of the students now are saying, Mrs. Smith, it was me, I shouted out. I mean, they are actually starting to acknowledging it, they're owning it, and they're saying, it's okay, I goofed. So that's been really eye-opening to see the kids do that, and to really, they're taking it to heart. They really are, and they understand it. Yeah.
Thank you for allowing us to share. We obviously can talk more about it. I'm so excited about it, but thank you so much for allowing us this time, and I definitely think we went over a lot of time, so sorry about that, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, well, at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Luke. Treasurer's report.
The board members have previously received the March 2019 financial report. And I just want to call out a couple of highlights for March. This month's receipts included about $3.3 million in first-year property tax payments from Cuyahoga and Geauga County for general funds and bond funds. And that was 81% of March's receipts. In addition, the district received some open enrollment, full-day kindergarten tuition, preschool tuition, federal reimbursement payments for our IDEA grants and Title IV grants, and interest earnings. The district also collected $76,000 in lunchroom fund receipts and received a $5,453 grant reimbursement payment from the OFCC for the facilities project. That was actually for the January reimbursement. The district has since also in April received the February reimbursement of $26,000. So those are being applied back into the facilities project. And we are tracking those separately. So just wanted to give a quick update on those. In addition to the property taxes that were primarily received in March, we did get the final settlement payment then from Geauga County the first week of April, and that was about $216,000, which is generally the settlement amount is very small at the end. As far as expenditures for the month of March, again, just highlighting the amount of overtime was $5,642. Substitute teachers were about $11,000 for the month, and supplemental contracts were $13,000 for the month. And then calling out your fund balance in your capital improvement fund, that's your facilities project. At month end, the balance in the account was $15,257,204. And your lunchroom fund account had a balance of $395,931. The other thing I wanted to point out was on the SM12 report that you received. We had previously had conversations about timing, and I noticed this month we swung the pendulum the other way as far as we had been, with the timing of the property tax receipts, we'd been tracking about $500,000 below where we expected to be with an ending balance, whereas this month we ended about $500,000 higher than where we expected to be. I have tracked those property tax payments in a separate sheet that I've shared with the board members, and that is updated and can be accessed at any time. And you'll see we came in as projected, as forecast on property tax payments, and then with that final payment in April. And I also updated it for the state reimbursements. They are not here yet, but we have those amounts, so you see those. And I believe that's all I wanted to call out in the March report, unless there's any questions.
I just wanted to say thank you for looking into the, the bugs or the errors in the reports from prior months. And I'm thrilled to know I can track the SM2, the cash flow report, and that our ending balance is approximately what we would expect.
Right, right. And there is also an appropriation report in your packet, and I've been working on that to make sure that that is accurate. And I believe these reports are something that we will talk about at our finance committee meeting, and go through those a little bit more. And then you have the detailed report from the facilities project, and again, it shows you your ending cash balance at the end of March.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Ms. Leclerc. Can I have a motion for consent agenda items 9A through O? So moved. And a second?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Bro, seconded by Mr. Kanzinger. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Leclerc, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bros?
Yes.
Mr. Kanzinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm scrolling down. It's a long list to get down past our hour. Can I have a motion for superintendent's recommendations 10A through K?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Moved by Mr. Rankin, seconded by Mrs. O'Toole. Mr. Hunt, would you please like to speak to these?
Sure. Item A is annual improvement of class sizes for open enrollment. As a reminder, that system is based on a priority system that starts with employees in the school district. Since the inception of this, we decided to cap it based on the number of students with parents that go to our district and not go past that priority. So make sure that we clarify that. Item B is a reduction in force at our high school and the business department to decline enrollment. Item C and D are enrollment lists that are presented at the April meeting. Item E is a recommendation for continuing contract for 4 teachers. There's a supporting letter from each of the building principals regarding the performance of those teachers, just to do more a kind of a summary of their progress and evaluations. Item F and item G are approvals of contracts for the upcoming 1920 school year, as well as item H as well. Item I is a resolution authorizing requesting the state for our ability to have our 3rd grade students take the ELA test with pencil and paper. This is something that recently came out of the Department of Education and the school districts with the approval of Board of Education could allow 3rd grade students to take either the math or the ELA or both with pencil and paper. And and talking to Dr. Jones about this, there was an interest, and she spoke with the third grade team, in having third graders take the ELA version, just at a high level and teach a lot of school skills at that age where they're teaching them to underline important facts or highlight things, and that whole idea of kind of going back and forth with different tests, and they really believe that allowing the students to bring those skills, especially at that age, just to use to the test, has given a much better opportunity for students to be successful. So, per the law, by May 1st, we had to put in this resolution for us to do this, and again, this is testing for next school year. Item J is the recommendation regarding policies, and we'll come back to that. Good. Item K is a resolution regarding the two change orders, 27 and 28. And item L is the entryway project, which we talked about before. We'll jump back up to policy, and certainly policy committee members here, so we'll jump in. Majority of these policies that are being approved tonight are required policies by the Ohio School Boards Association. Sets of those to review, and those recommendations are basically based on law, and there's not much choice in them. Some of them does address the medical marijuana specifically to school districts not distributing that medication. Also, there's a shift in the disciplinary side to bring to your attention regarding when students are put out for out-of-school suspension. They are permitted by law now to make work, so that is a change in policy as well. I'll then draw your attention to KGR 1, which KGR is a very general policy on community use. KGR 1 defines it a bit more. Policy committee spent a great deal of time looking at this as it relates to the possibility of allowing alcohol on premises with our construction projects as well as other areas. I think it was talked about earlier, we anticipate in our 2, potentially on 3 as well, to get further clarification from the board and work through that. The only thing I do want to bring to your attention is we're adding late. We've had attorneys looking at this, and we also had our insurance provider looking at this. Our insurance provider provided us some feedback on Monday. We then went to legal and said, this is falling on 1, this is falling on 2. They really felt it needed to be present on 1. So if you look on the second page of that policy, if you're looking online, it's under permits number 5. You'll see some language regarding thresholds for insurance liability. That could be new language that you haven't seen, so I just want to bring that to your attention tonight. Again, this is a first reading for all of these policies. If there's things we can tweak or change, that can be done. So I don't know if there's anything else for the policy committee that you want to draw the board's attention to.
So I appreciate that you reminded us all that policies go on 2 readings, so there's an opportunity for community input or additional board deliberation. The only thing I thought would be worth calling out specifically were the locations, which I think are identified on the last page. Is that correct, or is that in a different regulation?
I think that comes in
That's
the regulation.
Is that in the other one? Okay.
Yes.
So when we get to those, we'll start to identify which locations on school property. This isn't a pervasive, any event on school property could, involve that has adult attendance.
We want to have, that's some of the bullet points that we may discussed, if you want to have that conversation tonight, or if you want to wait till our 2 or 3 come around.
I think we should wait till our 2.
Okay, as our chair of the committee, we'll hold off until we get there.
I think the policy committee's done a great job for everything extensively, and also acknowledge that our 2 and 3 many documents that continue to evolve.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hunt. Any other discussion? Ms. Luca, would you please take a roll?
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mrs. Wojcik?
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Mrs. Burrows?
Yes. Added late was item L, so can I have a motion, please, for superintendent's recommendation 10L?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Burrows, seconded by Mr. Rankin. This is the resolution declaring the urgency of doing the entrances at Gurney. I think we've discussed those at length. Is there any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Luca, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Can I have a motion for treasurer's recommendations 11A, B, and C? And a second?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. O'Toole, seconded by Mr. Kanzinger. Ms. Luca, would you like to speak to these?
Yes, first is the financial reports that we previously discussed. Next is then and now, which is fairly routine, but this covers the College Credit Plus program textbooks to Cuyahoga Community College. And then the following C items are all generous donations to our district.
Just looking at the long list. That's great. I think a lot of our support organizations have just gone through the process of determining their disbursements. So of course, on behalf of the board, please extend our gratitude to these donors for their generous donations. Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion? Ms. Luca, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes. Okay, now for board other business, I have a item of preeminent importance, which is to say, happy birthday to Mr. Hunt.
Thank you.
We have a card for you.
I appreciate that.
Yes, we hope to get you out of here shortly so you can go celebrate with your family. That will be our gift to you. Any other business?
Just a couple of things. May 20th, you'll get a formal invitation to the Difference Makers Breakfast. That's an event that's every year pulls my heartstrings and takes so many people to go above and beyond. So this is an independent process where people can nominate people in the school or in the community that are really going above and beyond to help students or help our community. So it's a great day if you want to see if you can make it to that breakfast. Again, more information can come in. It's a breakfast, so 7:30 to 8:30. We keep that very tight, and a lot of people show up, and we 52 nominations thus far. It's open until the 26th, but we get people in fairly quickly. Also, I do have a request that we talked about this board prep. Request that we move to June 5th meeting to June 4th. That would be Tuesday, and that's just a selfish vacation leave on behalf of the superintendent. So check calendars.
Sorry, say the dates again.
Moving from Wednesday, June 5th to Tuesday, June 4th.
I cannot make it, but I'm okay.
All right. Mr. Clancy, can you make it? Okay.
I can do Monday.
Do you want to look at Monday? Maybe the 3rd.
I'm right on that, so.
So it's some holiday that I can't pronounce, but
All right, as long as that holiday that you can't pronounce is conflict.
Yes.
I'm in the Barbara.
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, we're announcing.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, that works.
June
Yeah,
3rd.
we'll move to change the notice. Thank you, Mrs. Luca. Okay, so now we have the announcement of our next meeting, which will be Wednesday, May 1st at 6 o'clock in this very room. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
so moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Rose, seconded by Mrs. O'Toole. And Ms. Luca, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.